Sure. So I'm Kylie Pepler. I'm an associate professor of learning sciences here at Indiana University. And I study kind of new technologies in the arts and how the two are starting to inform one another.
So I'm Karen Woolwind. I'm also associate professor in literacy, culture, and language education. And I study children's play, particularly around their use of digital literacies and how that impacts peer cultures. An important part of my work is looking at how the nonverbal or the multimodal parts of children's interactions influences their learning, and that's where Studio comes in.
I'm Naomi Thompson. I'm a graduate research assistant here in Learning Sciences at Indiana University. I'm interested broadly in sort of making and learning, and especially in informal spaces, and the way that technology and new media can kind of enhance that process, especially in STEM fields.
I'm Anna Goyne. I'm a second-year doctorate student here at Indiana University at the Learning Sciences program. I'm mainly interested in participatory design and sort of figuring out ways of broadening participation, especially in makerspaces.
And I'm Beth Buckles, and I am in literacy, culture, and language education. I'm just finishing up my PhD here at IU, and I study children and writing development and sort of broadening perspectives of writing in classrooms, elementary classes.
We've been using Studio Code for about the last 3 years or so. And we came to Studio Code because of so many limitations of so many of the products that are currently on the market. So we were excited to start using it. One of our first projects is that we started using it to investigate how young children were using e-textiles. So electronic textiles that are actually sewn into clothing, to create electronically enhanced, puppets or fashions and so forth. And so Beth was one of the leads on that project, and so we started using it to look more carefully at these dyads of youth, mixed dyads of boys and girls using e-textiles and how they negotiated the project over time.
We've used Studio Code in several ways. One of them is with preschoolers in a project that we did. It's a makerspace in a preschool classroom using squishy circuits. So that is a way that children can create electronic circuits with LED lights and using Play-Doh as the wires. So you can imagine with very young children that we often can see what they're doing and understand the things they're learning better than they can explain it. So we use video analysis with that and look very closely at how they are showing us all their understandings.
So Beth, do you want to describe on the e-textiles project what that was like?
We kind of jumped into Studio Code without really knowing. We were like the first to kind of jump into it. So I think our process was, a lot of it was just getting to know what's possible with it. We had a huge corpus of data, of video data. So we sort of just dumped all of that into Studio Code, and then just first of all tried to experiment with how to organize it. What's the best thing? We had 2 weeks worth of data, and it was on a day-by-day basis. And was it better to keep that all separate, or was it better to sort of merge all of that to have just one huge video file? So I know that was what we just dealt with in the beginning. We eventually just put it all in a large file, and then we were coding and originally coding for just the dyad, so we knew we were interested in dyad. So across all that video, we just went through and marked chunks where we could see this dyad versus, I think it was like 4 or 5 different dyads. So we chunked all of that data, and then we went through and looked at some gender questions. So we were noticing, we thought that the girls were really taking more of an active leadership role. So we started coding when the project was in the girls' hands versus when the project was in the boys' hands. And from there, we were getting sort of more micro, thinking of what exactly were they doing. So were they sewing? Were they gluing? Were they crafting? So anyway, yeah, kind of really just starting big, and then as we were kind of going through that data, really that coding process, I think, developed very emergent within that. And then able to really just, in the end, we focused on just 2 dyads. And we did a lot of work. It was really a qualitative piece, but we're really looking at quantitative time measures. So how much time across these 2 weeks, how much time was it in the girls' hands versus how much time was it in the boys' hands? And found, that it was heavily with the girls most of the time, which kind of stands in contrast to what we expect, what research shows with girls and computing and electronics, that typically, boys are feeling more familiar with those, the kind of materials there. So we were really noticing. So we used a lot of quantitative measures, time, and then just measures of how many times girls were sewing, how many times boys were sewing.
Also, there's a theoretic reason for doing this, and that is, for us, we're looking at how children's actions are meaningful. So for many of the programs we were using before, we had to look at video analysis, maybe chunk it with timestamps, but always with an accompanying text and transcript that was going on. So if we take the premise that children's actions are actually a meaningful way of performing literacy in the 21st century, then that reduction to text is something that causes issues for us as we're theorizing the data. So by using Studio Code, we're able to code actually on the action itself, cluster actions together, devise units of analyses that are, looking at strips of video, and then creating codes that look at just those strips, pull those up in a chunk. And so we have reduced the need for the verbal or the print-centric as we think about it.
So when we first started sort of with our emerging coding scheme, we started laying out things with colors. So we had specific children's and their names first in each color, and then specific sort of groups of practices in another color. And so I think as we moved forward and we're more firm on which codes we want to stick with and wanted to keep, those colors really helped see sort of where on the timeline is what, and really navigate the data in that way.
It also helps build some visual hierarchy. So, sort of color, dark purple to light purple kind of thing, and intensity, like you were saying, and, more to less, that kind of thing. So you can we use it visually, I think, a lot. Just ways to sort of, now that we can zoom out and sort of look at sort of the hierarchies and the connections and the, sort of how things are laid out together and really view it in an interesting way.
So with the drawing window, as we're looking at the ways in which the children's proximities to one another or to the material suggest a social space, a bond, an increase or decrease in attention. We're looking at those frozen moments in the screenshot as ways in which we can then use the drawing window to highlight and mark those instances. And let me build on that for just a minute. One of the things that I've done just in presentation with a screenshot of the coding window, the whole timeline window, is I've been able to just use sort of a red box to put over, here's my unit of analysis. And it marks that up. I just bound the coding rows, and people can quickly see. So I'm only interested when there are 2 or more children touching an iPad, because I'm interested in their collaboration. So I can bound those instances, and that's my unit of analysis, and then they can quickly see that. What would be great, I would currently just do that within PowerPoint, and I paste and cut and paste that over that. It would be great within Studio Code if there were a way for us as researchers, mark those windows and have those to be able to compare. Yeah, so we're, I've been working with a group of multimodal literacy researchers, and we are quite frustrated with having to take the work that we're doing and then describe it for a journal, or convert something to black and white, photo image, and freeze it in time. It just, it's just, you can't demonstrate that. So, so there's a need on the dissemination end to think about what changes would journals need to do, but I think also from the software side as well, what would be possible, and then in what ways can we move things out? As the other side of this is, we are going to be needing to put more pressure on publishers to provide us with.
This is a big conversation right now. So every major journal, every major press is thinking about this, and so sustainably we need to move towards more electronic publications, right? Instead of print-based publications. But people just don't know what the genre looks like. But I think the main barrier is the additional burden that these new genres place on the writer, right?
But also on the review boards and reviewers.
Right.
I mean, so things come in, and now there's a new onus on publishers to think about the confidentiality and what's being sent to them, and so there will be multiple review cycles. So there are a lot of complexities, I think, here for review, but for the publishers. But I think what we're seeing is sort of what I think is kind of an anemic response, in that you'll have an article, and then you'll have supplemental content, which is usually like a PowerPoint slides from something that someone did at a conference. It's still not the kind of robust representation that we need for good being able to replicate research, all kinds of things.